1 to 10.
Usually, like on a daily basis, I think my stress level is like 4.
3.
1.5.
Basic LeTourneau life, I would say probably like a 7.
I'd say between 4 and 6.
I would say maybe 4.
I guess probably maybe a 7, honestly.
Right now, about 2.
Right now, I'd give it probably a 5 or a 6.
Probably about a 7 or 8.
I'm gonna say 5.
I think you'd say you
I
are.
would probably say a 3.
Okay.
Maybe a 5. Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere in the middle.
What is 5?
I would probably say about a 5.
Probably like a 6.
Okay.
Like a 3.
Right now, I would say, how did you describe number 5?
Like you're running late.
So now we're going to talk about successful problem-focused coping. Problem-focused coping is whenever you change the stressor or how you interact with it. This is typically whenever you have control over what is specifically stressing you out. Successful coping looks like personal care, optimistic outlooks, emotional regulation, and social support. Now we're going to look at an example for this video.
So as you can see, we all experience stress. So, what is stress? Stress is the process by which we perceive and respond to certain events called stressors that we appraise as threatening or challenging. So today in this video, we are going to talk about 2 ways people deal with stress: problem-focused or emotional-focused. And then at the end of this video, we will talk about long-term effects of unmanaged stress.
What is your solution to dealing with your stress? So how would you say that you cope?
Planning ahead and fighting off procrastination. Planning ahead, knowing that Tuesdays and Thursdays can be full, and I try to get something done ahead of time.
So now that we've looked at an example for this, we're going to discuss why it was considered problem-focused and what was successful about his coping mechanism. So you can tell that this was problem-focused because his main stressor right now is making sure the bills are paid on the 1st of every month. While this is a stressor that is repeated over and over again, it would be considered acute stress due to the fact that it only stresses him out during a certain period of time. So at successful coping, we have personal control. So personal control comes in with the fact that he has to learn to not spend the extra money that they get from the extra paycheck on stuff that they don't need. So, learning to just save it and leave it in a savings account would be the personal control aspect. An optimistic outlook would be knowing that it's going to get better in the future as they continue to save and as they continue to be cautious about where money is going. An emotional regulation would be having the emotional control whenever something comes up in between the paycheck and the bills that need to be paid then and doesn't have time to wait for another paycheck. Being able to be okay with that and regulate the emotions that come along with that. And the social support would be from him and his wife, being able to depend on each other and look to one another whenever there's a problem coming up with this.
Emotion-focused coping, just defined as attempting to reduce stress by avoiding or ignoring a stressor and attending to emotional needs instead. It's best used when you don't have direct control over what's stressing you out, so really the only thing that you can do is attend to those needs. Now we're going to take a look at an example of unsuccessful emotion-focused coping.
How do you cope with that stress?
I don't. It's a problem. I basically just compartmentalize my work away from my life and my life away from work, because both are both are equally stressful at times.
Gabriel is an example of compartmentalization. And what compartmentalization is essentially limiting your stress to just a certain context. Although it sounds great, it actually increases stress within that context and doesn't really solve the problem. And this is an example of unsuccessful emotional focused coping. And that's because it doesn't take control of the problem and it doesn't actually regulate your emotions. In order to have successful emotional coping, you need to identify the effects that you're trying to resolve and then specifically try to resolve those effects.
So now we're going to talk about successful problem-focused coping. Problem-focused coping is whenever you change the stressor or how you interact with it. This is typically whenever you have control over what is specifically stressing you out. Successful coping looks like personal care, optimistic outlooks, emotional regulation, and social support. Now we're going to look at an example for this video.
Stress can have some long-term effects if not handled. That can include effects on your body and your mind. So physical health, you can get migraines, fatigue, and you can also get an increased risk of infection. Mental health also can be affected, so that can cause anxiety, depression, and also difficulty in concentrating.
As you all know, everyone faces stressors throughout their entire life. So there are some useful coping mechanisms that we can use that will help better your quality of life and mental space. The two main mechanisms that are most commonly used to deal with stress are known as emotional-focused coping and problem-focused coping. Problem-focused coping is attempting to reduce the stress by changing the stressor itself or changing the way we interact with it. So an example of this would be if you had a work-related stressor that was really just bothering you, a way that you could put this coping mechanism into action is actually time management, like changing the stressor itself and not changing something outside of that. So working less hours, doing all these things that will actually affect the stressor. The second most common method of coping with stress is known as emotional-focused coping, which is basically attempting to reduce stress by avoiding or ignoring a stressor and attending to the emotional needs related to your stressor's reaction. So an example of this would be someone who goes and they run whenever they're stressed, and they're actually attending to their emotional needs instead of actually dealing with the stressor itself. Other examples of coping mechanisms are planning, canceling certain plans if you are too busy or your schedule gets too much, like taking sections out of your day actually dedicated to relaxing. Making to-do lists is another form of coping. Knowing when to take breaks and also kind of canceling plans, and asking for help with the stressors themselves. These are all forms of problem-focused coping. Other mechanisms that deal more with emotional-focused coping are activity or exercises, being super active, I guess, breathing, working on that, journaling, getting better sleep, and your diet are all related to emotional-focused coping.